Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video for More Survivalists, and this is because of a request I have here from one of you guys. Says this is by Twinkle Eyes. Hello sir, what's your take on all the planes going missing and crashing? I will be doing an international travel soon. What can I pack on board to survive if we were to go down? I will have my spouse and a 4-year-old child. Man, you have some tough questions. Surviving a plane crash would be pretty challenging, but the thing is this, guys, if you actually do a little bit of research, you will find out that it's not as impossible as it may seem. Sure, you're thinking of surviving an accident in a metal tube flying at very high speed at thousands of yards over the ground. If something goes wrong and that falls out of the sky, man, what could you do, right? Well, actually it turns out that in most cases people do survive when there's mechanical complications in a plane or other issues with the aircraft. It's not as unlikely as it may seem. If you have a pilot friend, it's actually pretty reassuring to talk with them and learn what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe a little bit concerning as well, because many times you learn of things that happen and people in the plane are not aware of at all. They have no idea what's going on. This pilot friend of ours, he told me that he actually more than once flew a plane with just one engine working. The other one was not working, or they turned it off because there was complications with one of the engines. And he told me that many times when there's problems, pilots keep on flying with just one engine and no one even noticed. They're perfectly capable of doing that and landing safely. With a smaller aircraft, he actually crash landed once, broke one of the wings, or I think it actually was both of them. Yeah, that would be a little bit more more dangerous and such, but he was obviously still alive, very much so. So he goes to show himself that even when there's problems with a plane, it's not as impossible as it may seem to actually survive. Now, what can you bring on board? That would be the question that you had. What can I pack on board to survive if we were to go down? Well, of course, the chances of a plane crash are rare, to say the least. Okay, it does not happen. I know we've been seeing some concerning stuff, with the plane recently crashing in Africa, the one blown in Ukraine, but there's thousands of planes flying all day long, and not all of them definitely go down like that. So chances are you will not have a problem. What can you actually do in a worst case scenario, or or at least a very bad one? Because a worst case scenario would be just flying on a plane like the people in that plane flying over Ukraine was, and just being blown out of the sky by a missile. You won't even notice it. But what is it that you can actually do? At the very least, what can you do so as to improve your odds of survival, if there's anything that you can actually do? One of the first things is actually knowing where you're going to be seated. One of the things that improve the chances of survival during plane crashes or during accidents when takeoff or landing is making a quick exit, getting out of the plane as fast as possible. There's a possibility of the plane catching fire, and in some of those cases you end up burning or you end up dying because of the fumes. So as to improve your chances of survival as much as possible, being able to leave the plane as soon as you can, that's something that you should be aiming for. Basically, what you have to do is request a seat that is close to one of the emergency exits, and being as close as possible. If you can be in the row that it's exactly on the exit, that's great. If not, at least try to be as close as possible. You can even request a seat being close to the exit when you're booking your flight. When you get on the plane, actually count the seats that you have between where you're seated and the exit that you have. If it's 5 seats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually count them so as to make the mental note of, okay, it's just 5 seats that I have to move so as to make it to the exit. In what direction is it that you're going to be moving? So clearly identify where your closest exit would actually be. I mentioned the actual contact touching the seats when counting them, because there's a possibility of during a crash or a mechanical complication or failure of some sort that the cabin may be filling up with smoke, with fumes, that you may be feeling dizzy and not entirely aware of your surroundings and such, and there's the possibility that you may have to actually touch those seats so as to find your way out. So counting them in that way will help you with that mental image, right? In case you're not capable of actually seeing, you're just moving by touching those seats. In terms of what you bring on the plane and such, one of the things, I know it may sound completely silly, but one of the things I usually think of is what happens if the plane goes down and lands on water or something like that, and you're wet, right? In that case, the type of clothes that you're using may make a difference. If the plane catches fire when crash landing, the clothes you're wearing also may make a difference. If the clothes that you have are fireproof, that would actually be a pretty good advantage. Or if you're in the water and wet, the clothes that you have, if they're capable of keeping you warm even when wet, that would definitely help you. Jeans, cotton in general, not a good idea for wet, cold weathers. I usually try to wear like a wool a top, you know, like yeah, wool material. Wool keeps you warm, even a wool sweater keeps you warm even when wet. Cotton, for example, will not do that. So synthetic materials or wool would be more advised. Same thing for my pants, the material that it's made of. In terms of shoes, I've talked about this before to some extent in previous videos. I like safety shoes, you know, the ones that have the steel toe, because they have that added protection to your foot. Many of them are actually pretty rugged, made of leather or some other tough fabric, so, and especially ones that have the steel toe protection. You know, besides having the slip-proof sole and such, which could be an advantage during a plane crash. If you're actually able of kicking stuff out of your way, or bending it by kicking it, and you have a steel toe shoe, that could give you another tool to use. Then in terms of what you actually take with you in the plane, like, you know, knives, you're not going to be able to bring a knife with you, even though it would be pretty useful. Unfortunately, because of the obvious regulations that we have, that's not a possibility. A cell phone, definitely so. The cell phone has a number of uses. You can have important files of survival information, or for calling for help, or the light, using it for signaling and such. What kind of phone? Well, if you could have a rugged phone that is waterproof and shockproof, impact-proof, that would be pretty much ideal. In this case, with the OtterBox Defender case, this makes it pretty much impact-proof to some extent, even though it's not waterproof. I think the Galaxy S5 is waterproof, or at least splash-proof, I think it is, but as tough and as waterproof as you could possibly have, that's going to be an advantage. Then, of course, an actual flashlight, which is part of the EDC that we always talk about. You have no problem bringing on board of the plane a simple flashlight. If you're, again, thinking of this almost worst case scenario where you crash landed or something like that, but you're actually still alive, and it's hard to find your position. You know, I know these things are kind of, you know, extremely rare and such, but they do happen. And if you have a way of signaling your position, that would be a pretty good tool to have. So if you have something like this, and you have the strobe mode, and or you have an SOS mode to leave it on, and when people look that are looking for you see it, it's definitely going to be helping towards locating your exact position if you have something like this. Of course, during a an electric failure inside a plane when trying to evacuate. If it's dark, you can have your flashlight for seeing and moving inside. The planes can be pretty dark if there's no working lights, so especially at night it could be pitch black in there. So having the flashlight with you definitely a little tool that during a disaster, an emergency inside a plane, it could be pretty useful. So I at least have one with me at all times, and of course when traveling in planes, I keep one as well. Now, a bottle of water. It seems kind of obvious, but if something goes wrong and you end up being hurt, or you need water for drinking, for cleaning up, if the plane is catching fire, you have a little bit of water for dumping it all over you and being wet and a little bit more flame proof or heat proof to some degree. Water, I think it's good to have. I always try having with me a bottle of water, even though because of the safety regulations they usually make you drink the water before going through security, but sometimes there's still stores before boarding the plane, so I buy a couple of bottles of water before getting in the plane, or if not, I ask for some when on the plane, depending on the flight, if it's a possibility or not. Yeah, water would be one of the things that would be a good idea to have with you. Then, you know, you cannot have a knife, as we were saying before. At least something a little bit of a prying, scrapping object could be a pen. So basically going for a strong, normal pen. All right, guys. Many of the tactical pens that look like ice picks, some of them are causing problems for people when going through security. So just be advised regarding that. If you have one of the more Kubotan looking tactical pens, you may have problems going through security. It could be, you know, worst case scenario, it may be taken away from you, or you could even have charges pressed against you for bringing a concealed weapon. At least in one case that I know of and read about, a real one, it did happen. So is that very likely? I don't know. I just don't think it's worth risking it, especially when you can just bring in a normal stainless steel pen that it's maybe not as strong, but pretty good enough nonetheless. You know, this is a Zebra F701 stainless steel. This one is pretty tough. The bullet pen by Fisher. It's also very compact. You know, once it's carried like that, very small, the bullet pen, but when open like that, it's actually pretty strong. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to have with you. Other pens, the Cross. This is one of my favorite pens. I've had it with me forever. The Cross, man, this thing has very tough. It's very thin, strong as well, stainless steel construction, and writes actually pretty nice. And it's a normal Cross pen, nothing weird or tactical about it. And yeah, a Parker pen as well. So just bringing a pen with you, having it there with you, that's something that I try to do as well. So basically those are some of the suggestions. I know there's not a lot that you can actually do so as to be better prepared in case of a plane crash or something like that, but all these little things will give you a slight edge, improve your odds a little bit, at least to some percentage, if you ever have to go through some of these worst case scenario kind of things. Folks, that's all for now. I hope you subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you like the video, a thumbs up is definitely appreciated. Take care, have a great day, see you on our next video.